Welcome to the Ghost Story Grandma channel. Today, Grandma will bring you a mysterious and eerie tale. Get ready for it. Ghost Story. Very scary, true stalker horror stories. Natalie put her phone down on the table, her eyes quickly scanning the message she had just received. A strange number. The content contained only 3 words. She frowned, slid her finger across the screen but did not reply. 3 minutes later, another message appeared. She opened it. This time, it was slightly longer. The sender mentioned a cafe she had visited that afternoon, along with a question. She locked her screen and tapped her fingers on the table. The first message could have been a mistake. But how did this person know she had been there today? No one knew except her and the colleague who had accompanied her. Outside, the sky darkened, and a light breeze drifted in through the window. She turned on the living room light, the warm glow spreading across the space. Her phone vibrated again. The same number, an image of someone standing across the street. Their face was unclear, a distant photo. She placed a hand on her chest, a chill running down her spine. Her mind raced, searching for a rational explanation, but there was none. She called back. No one answered. She sent a short reply. No response. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Maybe it was just a prank. That night, she slept uneasily. Her dreams were restless, haunted by the image in the message. The next morning, she arrived at work earlier than usual. Daniel walked over to her desk, placed a cup of coffee down, and studied her expression. "You don't look okay today." She pressed her lips together, not answering immediately. Her thoughts were still tangled. Should she tell him? Finally, she gave him a brief account of the messages. Daniel frowned, asking a few follow-up questions. When she mentioned the photo, he fell silent for a moment before advising her to block the number. She had already tried, but it didn't work. Another number sent a message instead. The content remained the same, as if this person was following her every move. Another message arrived at noon. "Don't go anywhere alone." A tight pressure formed in her chest. She couldn't keep pretending anymore. She decided to go to the police, but their response was not what she expected. A young officer asked a few questions and took notes, his tone calm and indifferent. They couldn't trace the phone number. There was no concrete sign of a crime. If this continued, she could come back. She walked out of the police station feeling empty. When she arrived home, she noticed that the window was slightly open. Her memory told her she had locked it that morning, but maybe she had just forgotten. Her phone vibrated again. "Don't forget to lock the door." Natalie closed the door and stood still for a moment, listening. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but the lingering unease wouldn't leave her. The last message echoed in her mind. She walked to the window and checked the lock. No signs of tampering. Maybe she had just been careless. Her phone vibrated. This time it wasn't an unknown number. Daniel was asking if she was okay. She replied briefly and tossed the phone onto the sofa. She didn't leave the house all evening. Near midnight, a suffocating feeling crept in. The air felt heavy, as if someone was watching. She checked the door lock again and pulled the curtains shut. Around 3 a.m., a faint sound came from the living room. She opened her eyes, heart pounding. Another noise, clearer this time. Something had fallen to the floor. She sat up, holding her breath. The room was dark, illuminated only by the dim glow of her nightlight. She mentally retraced her steps before going to bed. There was nothing on the table that could have fallen. Soft footsteps echoed near the door. She froze. The bedroom door was still shut. She hadn't heard it open, yet she could feel someone on the other side. The living room light flickered once, twice, then it went out completely. She reached for her phone, but the moment her fingers touched it, the screen lit up. A new message. Open the door. She threw the phone onto the bed, heart hammering. The footsteps outside stopped. Silence pressed down on the room. She didn't sleep until morning. When daylight broke, everything seemed normal again. No signs of forced entry. The door was still locked. Nothing was missing or out of place. She told Daniel about it at work. He studied her for a long moment before suggesting she stay with someone for a few days. She agreed, but that evening she went home to grab some things. The moment she stepped inside, she sensed something was off. The sofa had shifted slightly. The kitchen cabinet door was ajar. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. "Don't go." Natalie didn't reply to the message. She slammed the door shut, stepping back, eyes locked on the glowing phone screen. Her breath came in sharp gasps, fingers trembling as she scrolled through her call log. No unknown numbers. The message had come from an anonymous sender. She hurriedly packed a few essentials. Every step sent prickles down her spine, as if unseen eyes were watching. As she shoved the last piece of clothing into her bag, a faint noise came from behind her. She spun around instantly. The closet door was slightly open, even though she was certain she had closed it. A chill spread down her back. Slowly, she approached, heart pounding. Nothing was inside. But when she turned away, she saw the front door cracked open, air caught in her throat. She knew she had locked it when she arrived. This time, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed her bag and bolted out of the apartment. Even after getting into her car, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She called Daniel, but he didn't answer. A notification popped up. A new message. "You left already?" She threw the phone onto the passenger seat, pressed down on the accelerator, and sped toward her friend's house. That night, sleep never came. The weight on her chest remained, pressing down even though she had left the apartment behind. She checked her phone. No new messages. Around 3 a.m., the doorbell rang. She froze, staring toward the door. Her friend was still asleep in the next room. The doorbell rang again. Gripping her phone, she pulled up the security camera feed. The screen was pitch black. A new message appeared. "Open the door." Natalie gripped her phone tightly, eyes locked on the message. Her breathing was unsteady. The security camera feed outside remained pitch black. She took a step back, forcing herself to stay calm. A second message appeared. "Open the door." She immediately turned off her phone, clutching it in her hand. The doorbell had stopped ringing, but the air in the room felt thick, suffocating. No sound except her own rapid breathing. It was just a prank. She told herself that as she sank into a chair, trying to steady her nerves. But sleep never came. The next morning, Natalie left in a rush and went straight to the police station. The officer on duty listened as she explained, nodding occasionally, asking a few simple questions before telling her to report back if it continued. No one truly cared. Daniel finally called her back in the afternoon. His voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. After hearing everything, he was silent for a moment before telling her to stay away from her phone and avoid staying in one place too long. It was pointless advice. She had nowhere to go. That night, she checked into a small hotel. But the feeling of safety didn't last long. Standing in the lobby, a cup of coffee in her hand, she glanced outside through the glass doors. Across the street, someone was standing still, not moving, not doing anything. She squinted, trying to make out their features, but the dim streetlight cast their face in shadows. She rushed back to her room, locking the door and pulling the curtains tightly shut. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence, easing her nerves slightly. She sat on the bed, staring at her phone. No new messages. But there was a new photo in her gallery. A picture taken from the street corner across from the hotel, pointed directly at her window. Natalie clutched her phone, eyes locked on the photo. She didn't remember taking it, nor had anyone sent it to her. But the location in the image was unmistakable, right outside the hotel, directly across from her window. She shut off her phone and yanked the curtains closed again, even though there were no gaps. The small hotel room was so silent she could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Just a few more hours until morning, she reminded herself. She hadn't slept, but at least the feeling of being watched had faded. By noon, she checked out of the hotel and stepped into the bright sunlight. Squinting against the glare, she walked to a nearby cafe, ordered an espresso and checked her phone. No calls, no new messages. Daniel still hadn't reached out. She considered calling him, but her finger hesitated over his number. Telling him about the photo wouldn't change anything. She turned on her screen again. The photo was gone. She searched her gallery, checked the recently deleted folder. Nothing. It had vanished. The sound of a chair scraping against the floor made her look up. A middle-aged man sat down at the table beside her. Dark coat, sunglasses. He didn't look at her, didn't order anything. She focused on her coffee, pretending not to notice. But when she glanced up again, the man was gone. Slowly, she placed some cash on the table, stood, and walked in the opposite direction. From the street corner, she caught a glimpse of the man's shadowed figure, lingering near a bus stop. Natalie turned into a narrow street, quickening her pace. The man was no longer in sight, but the feeling of being watched clung to her. She checked into another hotel, this time on the 3rd floor. The window overlooked a quiet road. She checked the curtains, tested the door lock, then switched on the lights. The room was silent. Taking out her phone, she opened her photo gallery. Nothing unusual. She checked again, fingers trembling slightly. No strange photos. She sat on the bed, pressing her back against the wall. Closing her eyes, she took slow, measured breaths. A knock echoed through the room. Her eyes snapped open. She looked toward the door. No one was there. She got up, stepping closer. Her palm rested lightly on the doorknob, then pulled away. No further sound. Slowly, she turned back to the bed, keeping her eyes wide open. The room remained silent. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the air.